As the playoffs are nearing their end here shortly, it's only fitting to look forward and to anticipate the usual excitement that naturally comes with every offseason. Trades and signings, aside from the draft, because, have you seen the 2021 draft board lately? Are going to be what hockey fans will be ready to see happen. Well, the expansion draft is probably going to be just as fun. Anyways, I decided to take a look at an assortment of players whose teams would be better off moving on from, for good, for various reasons. And with that, here are 5 players whose teams should give up on them. Goaltending in the NHL. If I step back and try to describe it to you, in my opinion, it looks a lot like the weather, as in you can try to predict what you think you might get, but in all actuality, you can never be sure of the end results. I mean, just look at Carter Hart, for example, or Sergei Bobrovsky's first season with Florida. Like I said, all NHL GMs can do is roll the dice and just hope for the best. And that's exactly what Pittsburgh's GM at the time, Jim Rutherford, decided to do not long ago, as he decided to designate Tristan Jarry as the #1 goalie after trading Matt Murray to Ottawa. But, as is usually the case in the Steel City, the strategy of putting all the eggs in one basket and just hoping for the best hasn't worked out for a hot minute. I mean, Penguins do lay eggs though. Anyways, after a season full of ups and downs in the crease, Tristan Jarry finished out with a .909 save percentage and a 2.75 goals against average. Let's just say the postseason was much more disastrous for number 35. As Jarry received more than his fair share of scrutiny, not only from Penguins fans, but also from hockey fans in general, after having an extremely rough go of it during round 1 of the 2021 playoffs. The netminder, who just finished out his first season of his 3-year deal, is set to receive roughly $8 million in total salary over his next 2 seasons. While he wasn't half bad in the backup role for the Berg back in the day when he was making under $1 million a year, now, for Ron Hextall, considering where the team is and what they're trying to accomplish with this current core, before they age out, it would only make sense if he chose to upgrade or at the very least bring in support for Jarry this offseason. Definitely a more interesting situation here, as the reason for Nazem Kadri being on this list has absolutely nothing to do with his production on ice. In fact, as far as the regular season was concerned, Nazem Kadri worked out amazingly well for the Avalanche, as they finally found the reliable second-line center that they had so desperately been needing. As a forward, finished with 32 points after 56 games played. But despite this, well, things didn't exactly go as the team would have hoped in the postseason, as Kadri, for the 3rd time in his NHL career, found himself receiving a multi-game suspension for his actions during the postseason. This not only put the spotlight back on Kadri and pretty much proved that old habits do die hard, but also put the Avalanche in a difficult position following the loss of number 91, as he was ordered to sit out for 8 games. And really, in my opinion, Kadri would be perfect for any team that doesn't expect to make the playoffs for a bit, and is still rebuilding, because I mean, the guy usually only snaps after the regular season anyways, right? Kadri, who will be entering his final year of his 6-year deal that was initially inked in Toronto, could very well find himself on a new team for the start of the 2021-2022 campaign. Coming in initially, DeBrusk, who was drafted 14th overall by Boston, looked as if he could be the answer that the Bruins had been looking for on the second line, as number 74 on the left wing was able to be a stable force for the B for a few seasons, as he was able to notch at least 40 points in back-to-back seasons. But unfortunately, DeBrusk went from putting up 42 points in 68 games played in his sophomore season, with 27 of those being goals, to a measly 14 points in 41 games played. Now, on the surface, it's easy to assume that this was just an off year, but if the Bruins do decide to ship off DeBrusk, his production won't be the only reason for it, as according to The Athletic, Bruce Cassidy indicated that there could be some real friction between player and coach brewing behind the scenes. My conversations with Jake, I think, would have been too raw the day after, so we're going to sit down this week now that we've both digested a little bit of the season and say, okay, let's find some common ground on where you see yourself fitting into this lineup and where I feel you need to be better, he says. DeBrusk, who was a healthy scratch on 3 occasions in the regular season and once in the playoffs, lost his second line position, first to Nick Ritchie and then to Taylor Hall. Cassidy was forward as well during the regular season, while calling the forward out while saying, "We just need a higher compete level," Cassidy says. "It's not about individual stats. You need to help this team win," he says. Therefore, taking all of this into account, the trend here is usually, unless you're Jack Eichel or something, when a player has fallen out of favor with the head coach, well, it usually doesn't end well if the coach is sticking around. Last offseason, Oliver Ekman-Larsson was completely open and adamant about wanting to leave the desert for good, as he indicated that he would play for either Boston or Vancouver and waive his no-move clause in order to do so. But after providing the bait and getting no real response from either club, it seems like the captain and his longtime team are going to give things another go in hopes of giving OEL a new home. While struggling last season with injury, the defenseman's production did as well, as he was only able to register 24 points in 46 games played. And really, if he was making less money, it wouldn't be all that bad for the Coyotes. But considering their current predicament and the fact that number 23 has over $20 million coming to him in total salary over the next 2 seasons, the Yotes are more than willing to try and accommodate their captain in hopes of securing a first-round pick, I'm sure. This postseason, it became abundantly clear for the Edmonton Oilers that having 2 very good players on the roster just wasn't enough, as the hockey world witnessed a surprising sweep take place up north as the Winnipeg Jets decimated Edmonton. Therefore, for Ken Holland, things are probably going to be busy this offseason. And one contract that the Oilers could definitely benefit from taking off the books is that of James Neal's. As Neal, who is entering his second to last season on his 5-year contract with a $5.75 million AAV, hasn't quite panned out for the team lately, as number 18 was only able to record 10 points after 29 games played, as he was scratched and sent down to the taxi squad for part of the regular season. Holland, who has already indicated that he will be considering some buyout options this summer, could very well decide to bite the bullet per se and move on from Neal for good. This would not only save the club around $8 million, but would also allow for Holland to finally be able to afford some more depth in the bottom 6 or go towards finding a competent starter in net.